Hello, and welcome to Jung at Harp. Today, by myself, I am here to talk about structure is freedom and to have a conversation with Carl Jung through AI about this. So, normally I meet here every week with Kathleen Wiley, a Jungian psychoanalyst, and I am Deborah Henson-Conant. I am a composer and a performer. Both Kathleen and I play the harp, and so we call this Jung at Harp. Each week we get together to come up with a question that we want to explore, not an answer we want to pontificate about, but a question that we want to explore with you. And we do that through the chat. So we're on a platform here that on most of the places where we are broadcasting or streaming live, if you chat in the chat, it will come through to us, or today to me. So I'm going to set that up now, and I'm going to welcome you. And so here's what I did this morning, knowing that Kathleen wouldn't be here and knowing that I wanted to still connect with you all. I thought, okay, I went to AI and I said, well, AI, what would Carl Jung have to say about these two things? Number one, structure is freedom. And I chose that because right now, for the next 3 months, I and everyone in Hip Harp Academy is going to be focusing on that concept of what does it mean that structure is freedom, or structure is the foundation of creative freedom. And then the other thing I asked is, what might Carl Jung have to say about how improvisation works in music? So I am going to have a conversation with you, with AI, about these two things. And if you're hearing this, can you please let me know if you're able to chat, whether you're able to hear me? This is something I never know. Things work, sometimes they don't work. So if you could just chat and let me know whether you can hear what I'm doing. And if I play the harp, whoops, it's not plugged in, so you still can't hear it. Hi, Donald. Are you able to hear me speaking? And are you able to hear the harp? So let me know if you can. I can hear you loud and clear. Okay, that's great. All right, great. So when I asked AI this morning, what would Carl Jung have to say about these two things? I'm just going to read what I got from the AI nebula. And here's the first thing. What AI said is about structure is freedom. Jung would likely find this paradox deeply meaningful, as he was drawn to such tensions of opposites. At least that's how I think many people see structure and freedom. They think of it as two opposing concepts. And yet, I just posted a blog yesterday. Oh, great. Thank you. I just posted a blog post yesterday. It should be up now. That is about one of the members of Hip Harp Academy who came into the academy with the intention of learning about music and exploring her musicianship and her musicality and music itself and improvisation, and had never ever intended to tell stories with music. But after hearing a lot of people in the academy exploring the idea and experimenting with different ways to literally tell stories with music, or to combine their own passions with music through improv, she was reading a scientific article about the Pleiades and sort of how it spawned stories throughout time. And suddenly there was this story that she wanted to tell, and she wanted to tell it with music. And at the time she was studying blues. And so she thought, okay, well, I'm going to put it together with blues. And blues has a very, very strong structure. And so she then came to me, she got stuck, and she came to me and said, I'm trying to put this story together with the blues, but the blues has such a strong structure, she didn't say this exactly, that it's making it hard to tell the story. How do I fit the words into the structure of the blues? And what I said to her was, I don't think this is what she was expecting to hear, but I said, you don't fit the words into the already structure of the blues, but you can stretch the structure to fit the story. Now, I don't know if this is my belief or if this is a truth, is that there's a hierarchy. All my life, I've been telling stories with music and words and music always. And ever since a kid, my thought was the meaning of the words, the story that I'm telling is the number one thing that has to happen. The words that I use to tell the story must be in the feeling and the meaning of the story. And the music has to stretch and not accommodate, but speak to that. The music has to open up. So while I'm going to play the blues that she was playing. So it was a blues that I call the contemplative blues. It's in A minor, and it's got these really beautiful open chords. And you can play blues Z music, or you can play blues, the 12-bar blues. She was playing the 12-bar blues. And if I'm just improvising, I'm going to try to fit into the music. Actually, I'm not fitting in. I'm letting the music give me the pulse of what I'm saying. But I came here not knowing exactly what I'm saying. So I'm following the structure of the music. That's what I'm doing now. There's 12 bars here, 12 measures of music, and this pulse, this beat, it's like the banks of a river in which I can flow, and that's how it will go. And this is when I'm putting myself into the pulse of the blues. So that's one way of the structure giving me freedom. It's kind of pulling me forth. It's guiding. The structure of the music is guiding me. But that's not what she was doing. She was telling a story, and the story was she needed to tell the story. And there were times when she needed space, much more space than that, in between each part of the story that she was telling. She might even need to come away and use her hands or gesticulate. And in that case, the structure needed to open up. It couldn't even necessarily follow the 12-bar form, because there were times when there needed to be a kind of a question and then a resolution. A question or a moment of tension where something might need to be expanded or talked about, and then a resolution. And so in this case, what I said to her was, the structure, you don't fit the words into the structure. You stretch the structure to support whatever words that you're going to say. And if you go to my blog right now, you can actually see her story, which is this fascinating story. It's the first story she's ever told with music. And it's a story about the birth of storytelling. And it was just one of those moments when, someone does something for the first time and you're like, wow. And all it took was for me to say to her, I mean, she started putting it together. She saw what other people were doing in the academy, the experimentation. She loved the blues. She loved these particular harmonies. So it was like she had all her stuff, but she had this idea that this structure had to be followed and that it had a certain pulse to it, which is true until you start combining it with something that is, I don't want to say what's about to come out of my mouth, but I'm going to say it and then we'll see what that means. When you combine it with something that has a greater meaning or a greater, I don't know, meaning quotient, or I don't know, when you're telling a story, the story. Oh, now I'm thinking, see, now if Kathleen was here, we would be going back and forth now and going back and forth with myself, because there are times, like say in a sea shanty or something like that, where the structure of the music actually becomes, or when the underlying pulse of the music is actually part of the story in a certain way. But in this story that she was telling, the structure of the music had to open up, and yet it still had to, or she wanted it to be able to also illustrate this, not just, when you listen to it, you'll hear her literally illustrating certain parts of the story, but she also wanted it to enhance or reflect or give an atmosphere of other parts of the story. And so for that, one of the biggest things that I told her, and you actually can see a coaching session, you can see 45 seconds of a coaching session in that blog post. Basically, I was telling her, yeah, you need to stretch, and you need to know what are the arrival places of the music and what are the places that can hold it up. So when I'm playing, this is an arrival place or a starting place. I mean, when you go, that's like, and I'm here. That's the arrival. So I was showing her that is not arrival. And when you make that chord and you create that kind of harmony, you can talk and talk and talk and talk, and you can wait, you can keep talking, and the ear is waiting, the heart is waiting for the moment when you come back and resolve onto that. And so those tensions that are naturally a part of the music can open up to make way for the story. So I see Donald saying, so the structure is the scaffold you can fall back on, but it's not the story, thought, or emotion, which is the main thing you are connecting to connect the audience with. Right. Yeah. So the structure is there. Oh, sorry. Let me pull this up because I can. The structure is there to support and not confine. And that's why it was interesting when I went to AI and AI was saying, like, well, Jung would be interested in this kind of a paradox between structure and freedom. I don't see it as a paradox. I mean, this is AI talking. So we don't need to talk about that. But I mean, it's fascinating because it gave words to this thing. It gave me something to be like, oh, wait a second here. That was what I learned when we were writing the blog post last night, and I was trying to explain it, that certainly musical structure, but then I started thinking about every structure, the structure of an essay, the structure of a home, the structure, any structure is there to support, but not confine, unless it's the structure of a prison. But that's a different thing. That's a prison is an intentional way to, or a cage is its intention is to confine, but it is not the intention of structure to confine at all. Structures are created. An airplane has a structure, a bird has a structure, a story has a structure. So, and without that structure, and this is what I was very interested in. I intentionally, I started reading what AI said, and then I was like, no, I'm going to wait until I'm online with you all. It was interesting. So what it said was, the ego needs boundaries to function. Without structure. Now, right now, AI is being like what AI thinks Jung would have had to say about this. The ego needs boundaries to function. Without structure, psychological, moral, or social frameworks, the structure of psychological, moral, or social frameworks, consciousness becomes overwhelmed by the chaos of the unconscious. Structure provides the container within which the self can actually manifest. It's how a riverbank doesn't restrict water, but gives it the power to flow with purpose. And this was really interesting to me. So Donald's saying, don't let the structure become your jail. Right. And that's what originally, that's what she was doing. She thought that, as we all do, that, and I'm often struggling with this and don't even know I'm struggling with it, that I'm making the structure, I'm looking at the structure and saying, those particular things mean that that's how it has to go. Kind of like you, well, that's just kind of true. Like, kind of like you have studs on your wall every 16 inches or whatever. So that's where you have to hang a heavy painting. Well, yeah, kind of do, but you don't really. We don't need to talk about buildings, do we? Anyway, let's come back to music. I'm sure we could talk about buildings as well, and it would be really interesting. But while I was reading what I just read, I was like, oh, wow, this is so interesting, because one of the things I'm instituting in Hip Harp Academy this quarter is what I call Activation Week, but it's really Activation and Planning Week. So the whole quarter is called Structure is Freedom. It has that doesn't mean you gotta learn about structures or whatever. You learn whatever, you come to learn whatever you are going to learn. But we're looking at music and life from that angle. Structure is freedom. And so this first week, I have created a structure for planning, because I noticed that even though there are many planning materials and resources in the academy, like there's a practice tracker and there's a weekly overview where you can keep notes of what you've learned, and you can keep, it's got, one page where it's got a place for the questions you want to make sure to ask when we're live. And so there's a practice tracker that takes you for months if you want. There's the daily overview, the weekly overview sheet. Then there is a quarterly sort of the outcome that you want by the end of the quarter and how you're going to get there. There's also a structure that helps you vision what you are going to create that quarter. So there's all these structures that are helping you, that are creating they would create the banks of the river in which you can flow. But what I didn't have until now was a structure in which all these structures fit, so that they are super easy to find. They're all together in one place, and I go through each one of them. And I realized that was missing, because people had to go looking for the structure. And this happened to me the other night. I wanted to send out a piece of music to what we call first readers, people. So I'm composing music to publish, and we need first readers. The first people are going to read it. And did I write what I meant to? And I was like, okay, I need to send them to the music. They need to see the front matter of it. They need to have a way to respond. They need to know how to reach me. And we have a system, but it was all over the place. And the music wasn't together in one thing. It was like in two different compartments. And so I went to do this thing that really should take 5 minutes. And 2 hours later, I still was just trying to find the components. So let me say that again. I went to do something that should take 5 minutes and would connect me with the people and give them what I wanted to give them so they could give back to me what I wanted, which was their comments on the music. But instead, because all the components were all over the place, 2 hours later, I was still trying to find the components. Now, I'm just curious, does this resonate for anybody? Have you had that experience when you go to do something and the components aren't there? I think we experience that in our playing in life. I want to play something. My hand doesn't have it. And this is one of the reasons that I just gave this 5-day improv challenge. And because I wanted to show how it's possible to improvise with a very, very tiny form. And when I was creating it, I was like, yeah, but how are people going to remember it? I mean, this thing is officially called, this structure. People were improvising on this chord progression. I'm going to play it as a bossa nova, but it's just. So you could think of it D minor, G7, C major 7, and A minor 7, D minor 7, and G7, and C major 7. Or you could just think D, G, C, A, D, G, C. So why could you think those two things, something complicated and something simple? The structure of the harp makes it so that no matter, if I play a certain shape with my hands and D is at the heart of it, I'm going to get a D minor 7, or that's actually a D minor 9, A minor 9 with a 6, C major 7, or a 9, A minor 9, D minor 9, and G 7, C major 7. I might have said it wrong, but it's so the structure of the harp and how it's tuned and the structure of my hands is going to give me those automatically. So already it's a simpler. I can only think D, G, C, A. But then I thought, yeah, but jazz musicians would call this 1-6-2-5 because you're in the key of C. So that's one. No, they would call it 2-5-1-6. And because this is the second degree of that scale, the 5 degree of the scale, the first degree of the scale, the 6th degree of the scale. Yeah, so that's 2, 5, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. But the people who were coming to this challenge many were improvising for the first time. Some of them were new to the harp. Some of them were new to harmony. What would make it truly easy? What would make it possible for them to do this thing? To do this thing without having to know what they were supposed to need to know in order to do it. So think about that for a second. What would make it possible for us to do something that we don't know how to do yet? And so the night before I created the challenge, I was like, if only there was a sentence, because, the letters of the scale, D, G, C, A, and the sentence came to me, don't get caught anywhere. Don't get caught. And as soon as I got that phrase, I knew that would make it possible for anyone. Maybe, anyone who has a harp and knows the names of the scales, knows the names of the notes. If I was doing it with somebody who had never touched a harp before, I would have come up with a different analogy. It would have been, above the red, above the black, I don't know. It would have been something that was relevant to the colors of the harp. But the point was finding a structure, finding the way to describe the structure that gave people freedom. After that, then they could find those notes And then all they needed to know was a simple principle of chord building that happens to work really beautifully and simply on the harp. And the simple first principle of chord building is that you play every other note. And so all they needed to know was they could put their first, their second finger here and play this, or they could put a note above it, and then they're doing the same thing, but they're adding a note above it, or they could add two notes above it and put the bottom note that don't get caught anymore in their third finger. Or they could put it in their fourth finger, and then they could put all three, if they could physically do this. And they could do it with both hands. Now, they might not be able to do that technically. They might need to be simpler, but it's not like simple is less beautiful. The point is being able to give them a structure, and what I ended up doing, I just realized this right now, is I ended up utilizing a structure they already spent years developing, the structure of language. And by piggybacking on their already understanding of language, I was able to say, don't get caught anywhere, don't get caught. And it had meaning to what they were doing, because it was like, don't get caught in perfectionism, don't get caught feeling you have to do every note right, all of that. It allowed them to take one structure that already made sense to them, that they could hold on to, that was easy to remember, and then just apply the other principles over that. So what am I talking about? If Kathleen was here, I'd be like, Kathleen, what am I saying? So let me pull up Donald's most recent comment. Donald says, structure allows you, ooh, I love this. Structure allows you to let your full focus be the task at hand and not having it distract you from being mindful of what you're trying to do. So that reminds me of what AI said when it said, without structure, psychological, moral, or social frameworks, without structure, psychological, moral, or social, and I would say, or musical frameworks, consciousness becomes overwhelmed by the chaos, possibilities of the unconscious. Structure provides the container, focus, direction, within which the self can actually manifest. It's how, like a riverbank doesn't restrict the water, but gives it the power to flow with purpose. And when we put this thought together with the thought before that there was someone who was telling a story, they were telling a story, the structure of the music was interfering and trying to bend the story. The story already had structure in it. And that structure was the more meaningful, not the more meaningful, but it was the one that needed to be followed. It was the leader structure. Wow. So there can be leading structures and okay. Leading structures and following structures. I love it. Okay, all right. Now suddenly I'm thinking about the line dancing class I went to on Thursday night or Wednesday night, whatever, it doesn't matter. Oh, okay, all right. So anything else you guys want to say about this? Because I gave a whole bunch more stuff I'd love to go through. And now that we're talking about this, and if you go and you watch that video of Leela telling her story, and think about how this happened. So this is someone who got a harp. I'm pretty sure she's a psychologist. Anyway, so this part I don't know. She starts playing the harp. She learns a structure that she loves, which is the blues. Never occurs to her that she's going to be a storyteller. She just thinks I want to play music. Whatever story I'm telling, I want the music to tell it. Then one day, she's reading in a scientific journal, and there's a story about the Pleiades, which is either, I haven't read that article, so I don't know whether what she took out of it was something her brain put together or it was in the article. But there's a compelling story to her about storytelling itself. And suddenly, for the first time, she's being called to tell a story with music. Two structures, the story structure that's pulling her, and the music structure that she's been given. They don't, the music structure is not, it is supporting the story to a certain point, but then it constrains it. So what has to happen? And at first she thinks that the words need to fit into the structure of the music. And why do you think she thinks that? I mean, why am I asking? I mean, hello, Deborah, why do you think she thinks that? I'll tell you why she thinks that. I mean, I think she thinks that because we hear words fitting to music all the time. We hear people mangling words to fit with the music all the time. And we hear, the music and the words, enhancing each other all the time. So of course it occurs to her that the words need to fit into the music until she brings it into an environment in which she can actually ask this question. And she brings it to a coach who has actually worked with this question. Like, this is something I've worked with my whole life, and came to a certain point and actually was like, I will never, ever. Like, I just remember a time of my life where I will never make the words fit into the music. By gum, the music will always, just so that I had one thing to follow, one structure to follow, which was, what is the meaning of what I have to say? What is the strongest way to say this? Okay, now the music must support that. And so she comes with a constraint. I can't do this because this is in the way, and yet they're supposed to go together. I want them to go together. What do I do? And then the coach is able to give her just one concept. This can stretch. This doesn't have to fit in. This can stretch. My brain is like going like, yes. What if that dress in my closet that I've never been able to fit into, what if it could just stretch just a little bit so that I could fit into it and I could wear it and I could dance in it? And this is the structure of music. It is infinitely stretchable. And in her case, it was the harmonic relationships that really helped it to stretch. Okay. Oh, Donald is saying, I was wondering where we could find her video. Yeah, just go to I hope it's there. If somebody can go check it now, if you go to hipharp.com/blog, it should be the first story that's there. And there's two really interesting stories that are up right now, just recently. One is about Leela, and the other is about the first concert that someone did, the first house concert they ever did. So these are, and as we were writing this story last night, and as we're just about to post yet another story tomorrow or the next day, and I realized they're all about people doing something for the first time. Things that they've seen other people do, but they're doing it for the first time. And these are all stories that are coming out of Hip Harp Academy. And I hadn't thought about that when we were posting them. And then when I was reading it last night, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Really interesting. These two things, how these fit together. Yeah, the story, when we heard the story, it's one of those meta stories where it starts off saying what it's about, and then in the end you realize, oh my God, I just experienced that. It's really fun. Victoria said, structure is a good start, but it can be rigid for some people. I love this one phrase, it can be rigid for some people. So that makes me think, why is it rigid for some people? And I'm that people sometimes, and sometimes I'm not that people. Victoria is saying, what I'm hearing is that expert coaching plus structure can help us use the structure to expand rather than being confined by the structure. Yes, and it's interesting that you said the word expert. It makes me want to look the word up, because I realize that I have an expertise in that. Why? Not because I went to school for that or anything, but just because I have grappled with that exact problem throughout my life, found solutions, gone to other experts, then been able to observe it, and then been able to distinguish it. For example, just realized this. Oh my God! Now I'm realizing that I've seen this ever since I was a kid. Opera singers are doing this all the time. They're going along like, well, it's not going to sound like that. Like, what would it sound like? I don't know what it sounds. Let me do it up. So you just realize I grew up with that. That was a stretching of the structure. It was boom, choo, 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 boom, choo, 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 boom, choo, choo, choo. And then sitting on the dominant, which I'm not going to go into what the dominant is, although I'd love to do a Jung at harp about the dominant someday. And then you saw me just take that thing and just go like that, and then come back. And that's basically what I was telling her, but applied in a new way to an adjacent style. So it was being applied to the style of open blues, but then another style on top of that, which was storytelling. So, and of course, the expert is that person. I'm the person who's like, my God, am I doing it right? Am I going to fall off the thing? And the expert is the one like, there is no problem. You can walk on this thing, because they've found the balance. They know that there's not alligators over there or whatever. Anyway, okay, now blah, blah. Okay, great. And Donald's saying he's found the blog post already. Great, beautiful. So yeah, Victoria, an expert coaching plus structure. So the expert, well, hopefully what the expert will do is give you the most foundational structure. In other words, with the least amount of bells and whistles, so that it has room in it already. And then the expert or the experienced person, maybe that's where expert and experience, I don't know, but the experienced person, the inexperienced person will try to follow the rules because they're afraid that if they don't, they're going to fall off. And I know this because I am often that person who's like, if I don't do this right, I'm going to, I don't know, something, whatever. I mean, that's me almost all the time in life, except when I'm cooking or when I'm playing music, when I know the land and I know what can be stretched. So yeah, being able to have an expert to go to and knowing what the structure is lets us expand it rather than be confined by it. But we don't know in the beginning what can be stretched and what can't be stretched. We don't know what's holding up that structure. She didn't necessarily know that this is like, or this is going to hold people in place until you do this. So she just needed to be like, I mean, what I told her was so short, so little. And then she was like, now I got it. And then she took it back and put it into play. So Victoria's saying, I think being unconventional helps. You value freedom and you like to break from rigidity. Some coaches or teachers are rigid and they would benefit from breakthrough, honestly. That's called taking someone else's inventory. You should change. It's true. I've been told many times that I'm unconventional, and it's not intentional that I'm unconventional. I'm just kind of missing certain conventions, but I think that this comes from my training. And I don't know if it's because I don't know why my mother trained me this way, but I think I've always had a very hard time remembering specifics or what comes after what, or I don't know. And so she was always, okay. Here's the simplest form of this. It's like this. Okay. It's like this. It's just three things. Okay. They fit together like this. So, and I think she was often using metaphor to help me see. And so I think I end up coming across as unconventional often because I'm looking at a more foundational level. Like, for example, the real breakthrough in the DHC harp came when I said to Jacques Francois, but it's just like a bicycle frame. Look at it. It's a bicycle frame, but it's a bicycle frame with strings. Can't you go to the bike builders because they've already figured this out? And this was the big breakthrough in the building of the DHC harp. And to hear about that, you can go to my TEDx talk, which is on my homepage, hipharp.com. Hip as in cool, harp as in the instrument.com. But Victoria, I think what comes across as unconventionality for me is probably fundamental abilities, seeing where this is in my brain exactly like a bike frame. To my brain, they're exactly the same thing. I get that they're not, but they are. And so I think often then I'll find solutions that are based on that foundationalness rather than the convention, because I can't even see the convention. And for me, sometimes I really need desperately the structure, and I need the teacher to show me the structure and not the unconventionality. It's interesting how they work together. Donald is saying, it's like when you go somewhere new, you follow the map or navigation to get from A to B. But when you live somewhere, you decide your route as you go because you're not afraid of getting lost. Right. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I can't really do that well. And so I will build my own map of my own things to help me do that. And it's interesting that you should say that, because one of the things my older the therapist I had years ago said to me with great sadness, he said, Deborah, everything doesn't need to be creative. And I didn't know how to not have it be creative. And so he went about having me do exercises. He said, go into a grocery store and start noticing what the conventions are. Like, conventionally, a grocery store will have it will typically have all the frozen food together. It will typically have the cashier near the front door. And start looking for these things, start looking for these conventions, because they can help you. And I think he was helping me in the opposite side of how I was helping Leela. He was helping me to see a world that just seems like, well, there's just a bunch of random stuff. And if you don't label it, you're never going to know where it is or how to find it again. And he was helping me see, no, there is some convention here. And that will help a person like me to actually be able to navigate the world. This is so interesting. Yeah. So structure is freedom. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. All right. I have a meeting to go to. All right. So I want to read the rest of these. Victoria says you break the code on how, you break the code on how to be free without being lost. You drew the map or structure to freedom. That is my intention for sure. How to be free without being lost. Or even to be okay being lost for a little while with having trust in that moment of being lost that there's a way back. And you're absolutely right. That is what I am teaching, and that is what I'm focusing on teaching this quarter. So thank you. Thank you. Kathleen will be back next week. I will not have to resort to AI for this insight into another musical mind. And of course, you are here always. This was amazing. So thank you so much. I just got to the beginning of what it said. I could come back here 20 times in the next few days. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, everybody else who just said hello here, and all the people who comment on Jung at Harp in between times. Oh, I'm clicking stuff. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. Sorry, the word that's coming to my mouth is, I once was lost and now I'm found. Blind and now I see. I certainly feel like I am more found than I was at the beginning of this conversation, and I can see more into my own blindness and appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week with Kathleen.